Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on Rumble for Stay Free with Russell Brand. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, join us on Rumble, particularly after about 10, 15 minutes or so, where we will be using freedom of speech to say the most uncanny, absurd, and ultimately truthful things. Things that might not please the establishment, but will certainly present opportunities for you to awaken, form new alliances, and ultimately new systems that will replace this corrupt carnival that's taking place even now, particularly around Donald Trump's arraignment and ongoing criminalization. We'll be talking about the criminalization of Trump and how it distracts us from significant global events like Finland joining NATO, and speaking to Aaron Maté about that at length. Aaron Maté, our fellow conspiracy theorist and far right-wing nut, not just right-wing, far right. We look over our shoulder, there's Mussolini, Oswald Mosley, and the big little guy. They're just back there going, come back to neoliberalism, come back to the lack of inquiry that passes for mainstream media reporting. How are you today, on-screen assistant, Mr. Gareth?
Yes, very well, very well.
Oh, you feel quite well, do you?
Yes. Oh,
How are your old biochemical and immune systems holding up?
Doing all right, thanks, Ross.
Fortunately, this is a period of grind, of sustained broadcast. How you know that the Trump trial is being exaggerated is the fetishization and amplification of the smallest detail. Have a listen to this reporter trying to discern and diagnose anger from the side of someone's head, like using a still. Listen to it. So, I mean, I've been obsessively in love with people over the course of my life. Over the course of my life, I've been obsessively in love with people, but I've never, scrutinized a person's face, trying to discern some sort of real emotion in quite the manner that this CNN reporter scrutinizes Trump, trying to divine anger as if it was some hidden stream being pursued by a rod. Let's have a look.
If we could go back to the picture that we just showed a second ago, he was looking off to the distance. He looked really irritated and annoyed. It was a profile photo that we just showed. There it is. I mean,
the one before that was.
Oh no, that wasn't it. It's this one.
This one.
It's
see,
very distinct. This one.
Look at that. Look at that. Also, when you just freeze someone, and actually, one of the ways that I can tell a really good actor in a movie is, sometimes when you press pause in a movie, not for any nefarious or onanistic reason, you're just pausing it because you do now. The same way as you watch everything with subtitles on now, the way the world's all changed and everything. Do you watch everything with subtitles?
I actually do.
It's weird, isn't it? We do. Everyone does. When you pause it, that's my dog Bear. Bear, stop it, Bear. We're trying to understand the news. You might as well analyse Bear doing that now and say that has got some sort of mythic, archetypal connotation, sort of thing I would do, actually.
Staring off into the distance, as
Bear
he was.
staring off into the distance. Could it be because of these dog treats, or is it because he knows that he made an illegal payment to Stormzy Daniels? There he goes. Bear, what the hell was that hush money all about, damn you?
Was it a misdemeanor or a felony?
It's a felony. It might have started as a misdemeanor, but by God, we're going to amplify it. It'll be a felony by the time we've finished with it. It's either amplify this to a felony or address the fact that our political movement offers no meaningful alternatives to systemic corruption, and we ain't going to be doing that anytime soon. Yeah, if you pause a film, you can tell. Say if you pause Daniel Day-Lewis, probably at any moment in There Will Be Blood, he'll always be sort of going, "Hey, my milkshake, I stole." He'll always be being that dude.
Sure.
You won't catch him just sort of going, "What's that?" He'll always look. That's the mark of a good actor, I would say. He's always.
I imagine that was what you did on the set of.
I'm another example.
Sure, Sarah Marshall,
Arthur, the one where I'm a rabbit, the one where I'm a mouse, the one where I'm a troll,
kissed Alec Baldwin,
the Baldwin one. Any one of those, you pause me, I'm conveying exact right emotion. So the way that they're sort of trying to, Trump there, he could be about to go, "Right, mate." Yeah, it could be anything. That's not
even the bit where they said staring off into the distance. I mean, how distant can it be? It's a courtroom. It's not even that big.
Yeah, he's not at the Grand Canyon, is he?
No.
He's not going to be looking he's just looking over there a bit.
Yeah, they're filling time is what they're doing.
They're filling, unlike us. Well,
we're not filling.
We got a Chris Hedges quote coming up that's going to knock your socks off. We're going to be quoting Baudrillard as usual because we're interested in pointing out that this is more than a political crisis. This is an existential crisis, and by God we need a crisis, because as they say, crisis is opportunity, crisis-opportunity, as Homer Simpson said, because this is an opportunity for us to address what's happening geopolitically. While all this is going on, while Putin's being endlessly compared to Hitler, Finland are joining NATO. We're being told, we've got this in a minute, we're going to show you a clip in a bit, where the description of NATO is worthy of The Simpsons. You're going to love this. But anyway, let's just watch a bit more of Trump's face and see what we can project onto this banal image.
Amy Gangel, you've been covering Donald Trump for a long time. That is a pissed off Donald Trump.
Right. You know, this is not defiant. We've seen pictures that sort of are sobering. No question. That is an angry Donald Trump.
That is angry. That's not defiant. They've got no moral authority anymore, I don't think. I just want to use this. This is a great quote from John Baudrillard, or Jean, to say it properly.
Nice.
Even as much as the French have irritated the English over the years, many long years, I will say their names properly.
Well done.
Check this out. The futility of everything that comes to us from the media is the inescapable consequence of the absolute inability of that particular stage to remain silent. They can't on CNN go, look, to be honest,
Don't know what he was thinking.
don't know what he's thinking. Could be thinking anything then. He might be holding in a fart.
Yeah.
For all we know.
Yeah.
He might have not cut his toenails properly, and a bit of his toenail could be snagged on the inside of a sock, and he could be just sort of trying to go, oh, can I get that off of there? Oh, I can't. Like trying to move a toenail inside a sock.
Because you know Donald Trump will have been thinking things that weren't about the trial, or weren't about this case.
Yeah.
Because we all do at all times.
I, in the middle of some of the most important moments in my life, still stop to sometimes think, I wonder if West Ham are going to be all right. You know what I mean? That crosses my mind.
Yeah.
I think, I can't believe I'm actually thinking about that now, because I've got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
But humans are complex, and thoughts are rather complex.
Yeah. But the mainstream media is not.
They're reductive and simplifying everything, and they're participating consciously or otherwise in a mass distraction right now. The really important things can't be talked about. Let's get back to our old friend Baudrillard before moving on with our media analysis. Music, commercial breaks, news flashes, adverts, news broadcasts, movies, presenters. There's no alternative but to fill the screen. Otherwise, there would be an irredeemable void. We're back in the Byzantine situation where idolatry calls on a plethora of images to conceal itself from the fact that God no longer exists. That's why the slightest technical hitch, the slightest slip on the part of a presenter becomes so exciting, for it reveals the depth of the emptiness squinting out at us through this little window. That they're terrified that they cannot provide an alternative to the nihilism that materialism and post-Enlightenment rationalism has created. If all that matters is what you want as an individual, if your religion is just your preferences and your aversions, then who are we? If you negate the possibility of the unknowable, the possibility of the mystery, the possibility that we are infinitely and limitlessly connected to one another in ways that are difficult to discern, if you accept that we are somehow connected to one another, and even if that's from a cosmological perspective, i.e. we are all in the same little pinhead that exploded into the universe, then you have to have a different set of obligations. You can't lose yourself in banal sectarianism the way we have done around the Trump trial. Let me know in the chat and the comments if you agree with me with that little piece of analysis. What we're going to look at now is the surreal bit.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting, because here this is another bit of news where they've got nothing. Like in a minute, we're going to hit you with some home truths about what's going on in the world with Aaron Maté. We're going to be talking about what's happening with NATO expansionism ongoing. But for a moment, let's enjoy the banality of this. Essentially, ABC News throw to a reporter, and listen to this. She describes something as surreal, but it's one of the realest things I've ever heard. She just described someone walking in a room and sitting down, I think. It's not like someone has an orange fall out of their ear, or sort of like blows their nose and peanuts come out of it, or they open their mouth and like the universe is seen forming within it. Have a listen.
So, a big day for our country. Let's bring in ABC News investigative reporter and producer Olivia Rubin, who was inside the courtroom today when Donald Trump was there, along with...
Big day inside the courtroom. Again, sort of magnifying the situation and sort of suggesting to you that the reporter has access to something intimate. But you've probably seen some of the footage inside there. It's just people going, Mr. Trump, and him just walking by. It's not like they're going to, what are they going to do? Smell a pheromone coming out of his bum crack?
Shan Wu is white-collar defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. Olivia, let me just begin with you. You had the front row seat. Walk us through what happened.
Terry, I think surreal is a terrific word to describe what was happening in that courtroom. As I've said, the former president entered into the room.
All right, let's have a look at the word surreal. All right, let's just have a look at a dictionary definition of the word surreal. Having the disorienting, hallucinatory quality of a dream. Unreal and fantastic. Here are just a few popular examples of the surrealist art movement. That's by René Magritte. There's Dali's Persistence of Memory, and the recent film being John Malkovich. And I suppose what they do is they play with form and context and our expectations of reality.
Yeah, well, what more do you want? She said he entered the room, Ross. How more surreal do you want?
Whoa! He entered the room. I mean, he didn't manifest himself within it or drop into it in the form of molecules and then recoagulate as a solid object. That would have not been surreal. Back to the vid.
President entered into the room and he had sort of a grimace on his face. He took in
Sort of a grimace. I mean, that's actual news. You can't legitimise all of the authority that ABC claims just to say he had sort of a grimace on his face, describing that it's sort of a grimace. I wouldn't like to say it was exactly a grimace.
No.
But it was,
I wouldn't go that far.
That's too much. Well, that'd be irresponsible. That'd be conspiracy theory.
Fake news.
Be fake news. That's the sort of irresponsible crap you get on the internet.
Yeah.
People saying that there's a grimace when it's more like sort of a grimace.
Yeah.
That's irresponsible. That's misinformation. They should be shut down. Thankfully, we're forming a body now to be able to censor that kind of madness.
everyone in the room, and he made his way to the defendant's table where the proceedings began. He sat there. He showed very little emotion throughout the entire hearing.
Very little emotion. Because, like, what would be the right amount?
Right.
Or too much.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have a barometer for the amount of emotion that Donald Trump should show in an arraignment.
No.
You can't quantify it.
Absolutely not.
Like, or like he's sort of switched off. Like, that's how people are.
Yeah.
Essentially what they should be saying is, look, come on, nothing's happened, except actually we are funded by the pharmaceutical industry and we get military-industrial complex employees on and just claim they're experts offering you a reliable, unbiased opinion. Like, yeah, that's what they should say. When Baudrillard talks about in the silence there is like this sort of truth, like the godlessness, I would say that there is still, because I'm a religious person, that God is in that silence and you're confronted with the deception that you've been watching. Deception or distraction, ultimately the same in a way.
He stared straight ahead. He looked at the DA's team who was speaking. He, at times, leaned side to side speaking with his attorneys. And that was sort of how the former president...
Imagine if I broke down Gareth's movement. Gareth looking down now, he's nodding his head a bit. Doesn't look like he's spent as much time combing his hair as he usually might. There's a little bit of a forelock falling over on the left side of his face, possibly because he himself is moving closer to the left in response to the allegations that this is a far-right channel. Like, you could endlessly commentate on minutiae if you wanted to, but what was better, I think, is to acknowledge that they are amplifying the significance of this trial, amplifying misdemeanor into felony, amplifying the importance of the entire narrative, because systemically and centrally there will be no meaningful change as a result of, you know, whether Trump stands again, doesn't Trump. Like, this is the stories that are important cannot be covered by virtue of the fact that they would potentially lead to significant change. And the kind of stories that we should be looking at are ones like this. Finland, who hate Russia so much that they possibly even participated in the Nord Stream pipeline explosion. Allegedly. It was either them or Norway. We don't know for sure because no one's willing to carry out an investigation, because if they did carry out an investigation, the UN have decided they're not going to carry out an investigation because it would probably turn up the fact that the United States were involved in that. Russia will beef up forces, beef them up, in the northwest as Finland joins NATO. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko has said that Russia will beef up its military presence in its northwestern territory in response to Finland joining NATO. Finland's ascension into NATO will more than double the alliance's territory on the Russian border. The Russian-Finnish border is about 810 miles long and will now become more militarized. They're militarizing Russia's borders.
Right. So this is obviously a good thing. I mean, obviously, it's great that Finland have joined, because more militarization, more chance of war,
more weapons
closer
sales.
to Armageddon. I mean, it's all good, isn't it? I can't see any downsides.
There's no harm in amplifying a potential nuclear conflict. I mean, what this does is it plays into Trump's hands. When Trump can go to Mar-a-Lago, the historic Mar-a-Lago, and say stuff like, they've tried hoax impeachments in the past. They silenced the Hunter Biden laptop report. They're bringing the world to the brink of nuclear war. You can't say those things aren't true. Let me know in the chat and the comments what you think. Those things are true. So if you actually despise Trump so passionately, isn't it beholden upon you to alter your own ethical and moral stance on significant geopolitical events rather than continually fetishizing Trump, even if you believe it to be to his detriment? I mean, I can't understand the worldview. Have a look at this piece of reporting on CBS, of course, another mainstream media outlet. You know, sometimes on The Simpsons where, like, they show the class, like, you know, zinc, like a video on the importance of zinc or something like that, or hormones, you know, and you think, God, this is so reductive and oversimplified.
It's like a Jebediah Springfield video.
Yeah,
isn't it?
like when they sort of explain, Jebediah Springfield came, and it's like,
He was great.
He was a great guy. Oh my God! And then they find out he was a terrible man. Like, this is like that. Like, this is right. We're going to give you one perspective on NATO. This is the mainstream media's perspective on NATO. But you know now, right? You're an adult, that there's more than one perspective. It's not just, NATO's not Superman. It's not like, you know, like, I never liked Superman anyway, so I thought he was too simplistic of a guy. Like, he's super, and that's it. He's not complex, he's not weird, he's not like touching himself.
You like Batman, don't you?
Because he's complicated
Right.
and confused and difficult, and plus he had to make his own way in this life. And you know what happened when the necklace got pulled off his mum, and you know.
Are you drawing comparisons between yourself
Yes,
and Batman?
I'm like Batman, except for that bit where he dresses up like a bat and solves crime, which some say are his defining characteristics and what makes him so interesting. Other than that, I'm a lot like Batman, other than in the way that matters. Let's have a look at NATO being described by the mainstream media in a reductive, and I would say, let me know if you agree with this in the chat and the comments, and in an insultingly reductive way.
NATO's a defensive alliance that protects the US, Canada, and most of Europe.
And that's all it is.
Yep.
It's not anything else.
No.
I mean, already, right? Just bear that in mind.
Defensive.
Defensive. We don't attack people.
Not aggressive.
We're not militarising Finland's borders or
No.
anything like that. We're certainly not participating in arms sales. All those things couldn't legitimately be called defensive, could they? So just remember, defensive. Let's write it down so that you're clever and tomorrow.
An attack on one country is considered an attack on all. Today,
Okay, thanks.
its newest member is Finland.
This is maybe the one thing we can thank Mr. Putin.
Actually, right, I will say this. Isn't it like that historic, wasn't a treaty between Gorbachev and Reagan, but it was an agreement not to encroach upon former Soviet territories by even 1 inch. I don't think Finland was a Soviet territory, but like, that's another nation on the borders of Russia that is about to be militarized. That doesn't seem like the right thing to do. It's a doubling down on the perspective that Russia is an aggressor, and you know, according to many, Putin is a war criminal and Russia have committed war crimes in Ukraine. I've got no problem with that. I'll tell you who does have a problem with that, the United States of America, because if they acknowledge that, then they're going to have to accept that their previous administration and current administration are also guilty of war crimes. I mean, it's so much more important than whether or not Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels hushed each other up the money pipe, isn't it?
That's right.
I believe what happened is someone's been hushed up the money pipe, Stormzy, I think, and as well as Daniel, and the pair of them are, if you ask me, they're as guilty as one another. It takes two, baby, to tango, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Let's have a look.
Because he, once again, here has precipitated something he claims to want to prevent by Russia's aggression.
In the lead-up to Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, he complained about NATO's expansion in Europe. But
Complained.
Hey, I do not like the way that Russia is expanding in Europe because it is an aggressive act that is against many historic agreements.
It wasn't a complaint, was it? It was more like, you said you weren't going to do this, and therefore we're going to have to, you know, it wasn't a complaint. A complaint sounds like you've just kicked a ball into someone's garden or something.
It's not that NATO borrowed Vladimir Putin's lawnmower, and then when Vladimir Putin said, "Can we have that back, please?" They went, "That's always been our fly-mo. We've always had it." And you can't prove that we haven't always had it. It was an agreement, a mutually beneficial agreement, so much as everyone benefits from there not being a nuclear war.
Ironically, Putin's achieved the exact opposite of what he wanted. Before Russia's invasion, about a quarter of Finns supported joining NATO.
She says, ironically, he's achieved exactly what he wanted, or what he didn't want.
Yeah.
But which is ridiculous. There's no irony about it.
That's not irony.
No.
You've not understood, right, as is often the case with American media reporting, they've not understood the meaning of the word irony. And that probably offends me more than bringing us all to the brink of Armageddon, actually.
After Moscow attacked its neighbour, that surged to around 80%. Since Finland's frontier with Russia is over 800 miles long, its membership has more than doubled Russia's border with NATO states. And right next door, Sweden's also seeking to join the alliance. Finland's military is considered one of the most capable and modern in Europe.
Moscow says that if forces from other NATO countries are now deployed to Finland, it'll respond by bolstering its own military in that region.
Noam Chomsky says that one of the ways that the media treats us is a kind of an ongoing infantilizing process. Most ads targeted towards the general public use discourse, arguments, characters with especially childish intonation, often targeting frailty as if the viewer were a creature of a very young age or mentally impaired. The more you try to fool the viewer, the more childish the adopted tone. Why? If one goes to a person as if she had the age of 12 years or less, then due to suggestive quality, the other person tends, with some probability, to respond or react with much the same thought as a person of 12 years or younger would feel. So they're talking to us like children, placing us in the roles of children. There's a kind of paternalism at play.
That's exactly what that report was doing.
Yes, it was. You don't need to worry. Finland have just joined NATO. And also that entire appraisal of NATO was reductive and childish. This is from friend of the show, Pulitzer Prize-winning conspiracy theorist Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges said, okay, so this is another take. You just heard them say NATO is a defence organisation and all that kind of crap. Well, check out this. NATO and the arms industry that depends on it for billions in profits has become the most aggressive and dangerous military alliance on the planet. Created in 1949 to thwart Soviet expansion into Eastern and Central Europe, it has evolved into a global war machine in Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, Africa and Asia. NATO expanded its footprint, violating promises to Moscow once the Cold War ended to incorporate 14 countries in Eastern and Central Europe into the alliance. It bombed Bosnia, Serbia. It launched wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria and Libya, resulting in close to 1 million deaths and some 38 million people driven from their homes. It's building a military footprint in Africa and Asia. It invited Australia, Japan, New Zealand and South Korea, the so-called Asia-Pacific Four, to its recent summit in Madrid at the end of June. It's expanded its reach into the Southern Hemisphere, signing a military training partnership agreement with Colombia in December 2021. It's backed Turkey with NATO's second largest military, which has illegally invaded and occupied parts of Syria as well as Iraq. So this is another perspective.
Defensive alliance, though.
Just defending there, just a little alliance. NATO is like you know, in the playground when you hold hands with another child, well, it's a bit like that. Like, it's a really sort of insulting way to present that. And I suppose that's it's so all-pervading that we forget to even criticise it. Like, the attitude towards us is, you are children, you don't need to participate. How could you even begin to legitimise censorship if you didn't believe that the recipients of that information are incapable of discerning for themselves whether or not the information is legitimate? Like, even just 10 years ago, you could talk to people with all sorts of crazy crackpot ideas and just go, well, that's cool and interesting. I don't think it's true, though, but nice one. I mean, let's face it, some people think some of the most literally religious perspectives in the world are ridiculous. On one hand, you've got Richard Dawkins. On the other hand, you've got the Catholic Church, and you just sit and listen to both and go, oh, cool, cool.
The irony of all this is that Chris Hedges, who literally wrote that about NATO, was obviously censored in terms of when RT was censored. That you know, no more Chris Hedges on the internet. Unfortunately, he's found his way back through other means and Substack and things like that. But these
I just want to congratulate you on the correct use of the word irony, Gareth.
But thank you very much. But yeah, the very fact that these are the kind of things that they don't want out there. When we're talking about censorship, it is from facts like this about NATO, because what they want us to know about NATO is what was in that news report. NATO is for this. It's good that this is happening. It's good that Finland has joined NATO. This is all good.
Yeah, Chris Hedges isn't saying, you know, I don't like Spanish people. It's not racist, is it? It's not like, I don't think trans people should be able to. No, that's not what Chris Hedges is about. Chris Hedges is going, wait a minute, I've got another perspective on NATO. Here's another perspective from Chris Hedges on war itself. That is a kind of view that's being even more elegantly extracted from the mainstream discourse. If we really saw war, what war does to young minds and bodies, it would be impossible to embrace the myth of war. If we had to stand over the mangled corpses of school children killed in Afghanistan and listen to the wails of their parents, we would not be able to repeat cliches we use to justify war. This is why war is carefully sanitized. This is why we are given war's perverse and dark thrill, but are spared from seeing war's consequences. The mythic visions of war keep it heroic and entertaining. You remember during 9/11, in the end, they wouldn't show the people leaping from the buildings rather than dying within it because a decision was made that that's too unbearable. But in the ongoing wars that are sponsored by the military-industrial complex, from which they benefit, that the media continues to tacitly support through their reductive reporting, to prevent us having adult conversations about, they are sanitizing exactly the way that Hedges describes. The wounded, the crippled, and the dead in this great charade swiftly carted off stage. They are war's refuse. We do not see them, we do not hear them. They are doomed like wandering spirits to float around the edges of our consciousness, ignored, even reviled. The message they tell is too painful for us to hear. We prefer to celebrate ourselves and our nation's imbibing the myths of glory, honor, patriotism, and heroism. Words that in combat become empty and meaningless. That's Chris Hedges, the conspiracy theorist and far-right nutcase. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to click over to being exclusively on Rumble now, where we're going to give you a fantastic insight to how your houses are going to be taken away from you by the financial industry. In short, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Sounds like empty rhetoric, sounds like a conspiracy theory, sounds like fear-mongering. Here are the policies that are going to bring it about.